Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel from Evelyn and Peter, and today I have this super cute crochet cardigan design to share with you guys. I'm really excited for this one. My friend Megan is making the knit version of this, so there will be a knit version and a crochet version available, and we are actually doing a crochet / knit along for everybody, so make sure you are involved with that. I will link to all of the info in the description. That will start in October of 2024. Just a couple weeks after the release. If you plan on getting the kit, then you have plenty of time to go grab that from linebrand.com. Comes with all of the yarn you need to make your cardigan, whether that's the knit or the crochet version, and then you also get a free copy of the printable PDF pattern. You can customize your yarn color, and they also have really good sales as well, so make sure you are subscribed to my newsletter and I will let you know all about their sales on my kits, and then all of the info that you need for my patterns as well. I let you guys know all of that in the newsletter. Whenever I have anything new coming out, you guys will be the first to know. This is also going to be free on my blog, so if you don't want the kit, you can just head on over to my blog for the free pattern, or if you prefer the printable pattern, that will be available in my Etsy and in my Ravelry shop. So that includes sizes extra small through 5X. This is the size small, the one that I'm making in the video, so make sure you pull up the written pattern as you're following along with the video, because all the sizes will have different stitch and row counts. A little bit about the pattern: it is made in separate panels from the bottom up. You can easily customize the length if you want a shorter or longer cardigan, and I will let you know how to do that in the pattern and in the tutorial. And then you can also keep the pockets or remove the pockets. I think it's super cute, but it's really easy to take them out if you would rather not have pockets. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video tutorial. So for this design, you're going to need worsted weight yarn. I'm using Lion Brand's Heartland yarn. You can find all of the yardage requirements and the amount of skeins that I use for all 9 sizes on my blog, evelynandpcrochet.com. I use the Canyonlands color. And then you're also going to need a 5.5mm crochet hook, a needle to weave in your ends, a pair of scissors, a measuring tape, and then a couple of stitch markers as well. So we're going to begin with the back panel. The back panel, both front panels and the sleeves actually all start off the exact same way with the ribbing. So I'm going to be showing you how to do that. You're going to start off with a slip knot. Just go ahead and insert your hook and then grab that yarn, pull it through, and then pull tight to secure on your hook. And we're going to start off with 11 chains. So all the sizes will be the same here for the starting chain. So just go ahead and pull through the loop on your hook a total of 11 times. Then we're just going to insert our hook into the second chain from the hook. We're just going to put it into the back bump, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2, working a single crochet into that chain. Do the same thing into the next chain as well. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and you're just going to do this all the way down the chain, working a total of 10 single crochet for row 1 of the ribbing here. So just go ahead and work your stitches back down the length of the chain. Once you get to the end of the chain, you can go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work. So that was row 1. We have 10 single crochet. Now we're going to start row 2. For row 2, you're going to insert your hook into that very first stitch under both the front and back loop and work a single crochet. And then for the next 8 stitches, you're going to be working single crochet into each of them, but in the back loop only. So the back loop is the loop that is furthest away from you. The loop that is closest is the front loop. We're not going to be working under the front loop here, just in the back loop only to create the ribbing. So you can go ahead and do that across the row. When you get to the end of the row and you have 1 stitch remaining, work your hook under both the front and the back loop this time and work a regular single crochet to complete row 2, and then chain 1 and turn your work. Now you can just go ahead and repeat row 2 for as many times as the pattern calls for the size that you're making. It's going to be different for each size, so make sure you reference the written pattern and follow along with the size that you're making here, and I will meet you back at the end of the ribbing. Okay, so I have all of my ribbing here for the back panel, and now we're going to go ahead and work row 1 of the main body of the back panel. To do that, we're going to be working the stitches into the ends of the ribbing rows that we just made. So you're going to start off the row by chaining 2. You'll notice that I only chained 1 here. That was a mistake on my part. You should chain 2. And then at the end of that first row, you're going to yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3 to create a half double crochet. Into the end of the second row, you're going to do that same exact thing. And then again into the end of the third row, yarn over, find that third row, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. So we're just working 1 half double crochet stitch for each of the rows, the ribbing rows that we have in the back panel, and we're just going to do that all the way across. So you can see I've come up to the end of the rows here now. My stitch count will be the same as my row count for the ribbing, so you can check that and make sure you have the right amount of stitches for the size that you're making. And our stitch count is going to stay the same throughout the remainder of the back panel as well. For row 2, you're going to chain 3. The chain 3 does count as a double crochet stitch, so make sure you pay attention to that. We won't be working into that first stitch since the chain 3 counts. And then we're also going to be skipping over the next 2 stitches as well. And then into that following stitch, you're going to wrap around your yarn around your hook twice, and then you'll see I'm skipping 2 stitches, inserting my hook into the following, yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops only. I like to kind of hold my yarn down here in between my fingers to keep it steady. Yarn over, pull through the next 2, and then yarn over, pull through the final 2, and we just made 1 treble crochet stitch. So again, we chained 3, which counts. We don't work into that stitch because it counts. We skipped over 2, and then we worked a treble in the following. Now we need to go back and work 2 double crochet into those skipped stitches. Now you're not going to be working in front of the treble crochet. You're actually going to pull it forward slightly and work your stitches behind the treble crochet. That's what gives this a really pretty texture. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into that first skip stitch behind the treble crochet that you made, put it under both loops, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through the last 2 for 1 double crochet. And then you're going to work another double crochet into the following skipped stitch. So that second one that you skipped, work a double crochet as well. So you can see we worked our treble, and then we went back to those 2 skip stitches and worked 1 double crochet in each, making sure we're working it behind the treble and not in front. So I'm going to show you that again. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches and then work a treble crochet into the following. And then we're going to go back and work a double crochet into that first skipped stitch. So we're going to yarn over and work our hook behind the treble that we just made. So you'll have to kind of fold your treble forward, insert your hook into that first skipped stitch of the 2, work your double, and then do the same thing into the second skipped stitch. So it might take a little bit of getting used to, but I promise you'll get it down within the first few rows of doing this. It'll start to come naturally. The biggest thing is to just make sure you're working your stitches behind the treble and not in front of the treble. I'll show you guys one more time. We skipped 2. We're working a treble into that following stitch. And then we're going to go back and work a double into that first skip stitch of the 2, folding our work forward so that we can see the stitch behind it. Work a double into it, and then finally work another double into the stitch directly after that one, which is our second skipped stitch. So you might need to fold your work back and forth to kind of locate that stitch and not accidentally put your hook in the wrong one. But it's super easy once you have practice a few times getting it down. And we're just going to repeat that all the way across the row. So skip 2, treble, 1 double in the first, skipped, 1 double in the second. And now I'm coming up to the end of the row here, and we're just going to finish this row by working a double crochet into the last stitch of the row. So make sure you don't forget our last double crochet, working it into the top of that very last stitch. Okay, so that completes row 2, and now I'm going to show you how to work row 3. It's going to be the same as row 1, except now we're working our half double crochet stitches into the tops of actual stitches instead of into the ends of the ribbing rows like in row 1. So start off by chaining 2, and then in that first stitch work a half double crochet. The chain 2 does not count as a stitch, so that's why we're working it into the very first. Work a half double crochet into the next, and a half double crochet into each of the remaining stitches of the row all the way across. When you get to the end of the row here, it's very important to remember that that chain 3 does count as a stitch. So our last half double crochet of this row will be worked into the top of the chain 3 from the previous row. So you don't want to accidentally forget that one. Make sure you're finishing with that half double crochet in the top of the chain 3. Again, your stitch count stays the same, so you can check that to make sure you've got all the stitches that you need for your size. And now for the remainder of the back panel, you're just going to repeat row 2 and row 3 over and over and over again until you have the correct amount of rows for your size. So go ahead and just repeat row 2, and then you'll repeat row 3 after that, and I will meet you back here at the end of the back panel. So this is what your back panel will be looking like after you complete it. Again, depending on your size, your row count will be different to the other sizes, but all of the sizes will end on a half double crochet row. You can easily adjust the length of your sweater by adding or removing rows in multiples of 2 as well. So if you want a shorter sweater, just take them away. If you want a longer sweater, just add more. And now you need to go back and make 2 front panels exactly like you do the back panel. You're going to start off the exact same way, do your ribbing the same, so if you need to go back and re-watch that, you can. Here is the start of my front panel here. It's the same as the back panel ribbing, and then rows 1, 2, and 3 are the same as well. You also just repeat rows 2 and 3 over and over, same as the back panel. Except we are going to be adding a pocket hole into the front panels. That is the only difference. And obviously the front panel is not as wide as the back panel. So just make sure you are watching your stitch and your row counts for that as well. I'm going to go ahead and add a handful more rows before I show you guys how to add the pocket hole. So pull up the written pattern and make sure you make the correct amount of rows for your size. And then here we are. We need to add in the pocket hole opening for the front panel. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So each size will be slightly different with the pocket opening. Some will have a different amount of half double crochet stitches on either side of the pocket. The bigger your cardigan, the more stitches you will have on one side. And so the placement of the pocket is also going to be different left versus right panel. So I've worked 3 half double crochet here, and now I'm just going to do a really long chain and skip over the same amount and then join back in on the other side. So I'm going to chain 23 and then skip over 23 stitches and join in with the half double crochet. Most of the sizes will have the same size of pocket hole except for extra small, but then the only difference is when you join back in, some of them will have 3 stitches left, some will have 6, some will have 9. So just make sure you're paying attention to the written pattern here. And then the front panels are exactly the same except for the pocket hole opening. So on one of the panels, you'll have to work your 3 half double crochet, make your pocket hole like I am here, join back in and finish with the amount of stitches for your size. But then on the other pocket hole for the second front panel, you will work a different amount of stitches, make your pocket opening, and then have 3 stitches remaining once you join back in. So that way that the pockets sit on the correct side of the cardigan and are closer to the inner front opening of the cardigan as well. So they're exactly the same, just the pocket hole placement is adjusted slightly, whether you're making the left or the right. And then of course the stitch count on either side is going to be different depending on your size. So it's just like what I'm doing here, but you might have a different amount of stitches on the left versus the right. It just so happens that the size small has exactly 3 half double crochet on either side. So just very important to watch what you're doing there and refer to the written pattern. Once you complete that row, you can chain 3 and turn your work, and we're just going to go right back in to our regular stitch repeat. You're going to be treating these chains just as you would any other stitch. So you can see I'm working my treble crochet into that chain, and I'm just pretending that it's a normal stitch, going back and working my double crochet into the 2 skipped stitches. And just continue across as normal, working those stitches into the chain just like you would with any other of these rows. Just make sure you have that written pattern up so you know you have the correct amount of half double crochet on either side of that pocket opening. Other than the pocket hole placement, it's going to be exactly the same for both the left and the right front panel. So it's just the placement of the pocket that is slightly different. After this, it's just your regular row repeats. Okay, so I'm coming up to the end of the row here, and I'm just finishing with my double crochet into the final stitch. So now we have our pocket hole opening here, and you can just continue on the front panel doing the row 2 and 3 repeat for the same amount of rows as your back panel. When you go back and you make a second front panel, the pocket placement for most of the sizes will be slightly different. Just the stitches on either side of the opening will be opposite compared to the first front panel. Only the size small and the extra small have an even amount of stitches on either side of the opening, so make sure you are checking the written pattern and that you have the correct left and right front panel. Once you have your back and your front panels, now we need to make sleeves. It's going to start off the exact same way as the back and the front panels. Begin by chaining 11 and then work a single crochet into the second chain from the hook and back across that chain for a total of 10 single crochet. And then work your regular ribbing repeat. So just repeat row 2 until you have the correct amount of rows for your size for the sleeve. So just chain 1, single crochet in first, single crochet back loop only across, single crochet in the last. Repeat that as many times until you have the right amount of rows, and then I will come back here and show you how to do row 1 of the main body of the sleeve, which will be slightly different than the front and the back panels. So once you have the right row count, we're going to be working row 1 of the main body into the ends of the rows like normal. The only difference is the amount of stitches that we're going to be working. So I'm going to work my half double crochet into the ends of the ribbing like normal. So I'm working my first one into the end of the first row, and now I have to make a second one into the end of that very same row. So you want a total of 2 stitches into the end of that row. And I'm actually going to do that for all of the ribbing rows across. So instead of 1 half double crochet per ribbing row, you're going to work 2 half double crochet per ribbing row. You might have a different amount required for the last row. You might not need to for it depending on your size. So just make sure you're watching the written pattern because some of the sizes might be slightly different than the one I'm making here. But for the most part, you're going to be working 2 half double crochet all the way across per ribbing row. Your sleeve will be looking wavy and crazy like this, but it is normal and it's supposed to look like that, so don't worry if your work is being all wavy. And then after that, and you have the correct amount of stitches to start us off for that sleeve panel, you're just going to go right back in to the regular row repeat. So I'm doing row 2 here, and then I'll follow it up with a row 3, which is just 1 half double crochet in each across. and I'll just be repeating rows 2 and 3 over and over for the sleeve. So row 1 is the only thing that's different for the sleeve. You're just doubling up that stitch count, but rows 2 and 3 are the same as the back and front panel. And then you repeat rows 2 and 3 just like you did the back and the front panel. So row 1 is the only row that's different here. So you can go ahead and just continue with our row repeat, repeating rows 2 and 3. And then I will meet you here at the end of the sleeve to show you what to do next. Okay, so now I have my first sleeve complete. It's going to look like this, and you can just go ahead and fasten off. Leave a tail long enough to sew at least this last row to the main body of your cardigan, and then you need to go back and rework the same thing a second time so that you have 2 sleeves. To make 2 pocket panels, I'm going to start off by chaining 2 and working a foundation half double crochet. If you'd rather do a chain, you can also do a starting chain here instead of a foundation row. I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into the back bump of that first chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 3. Then yarn over, and the bottom of that stitch that I just made, I'm going to insert my hook under both of those loops, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through all 3. Again, yarn over, and the bottom of that last stitch, insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. I'm just going to do this a total of 25 times for my size. If you're chaining, you can just work a starting chain instead and then half double crochet down the chain for the amount that you need. For me, it will be 25 half double crochet stitches. So it's going to be slightly bigger than what your pocket opening was. So mine was 23. So I'm going to work 25 stitches so that it will cover up that pocket hole nice and clean when we sew it on. When you get to the end of the row and you have the correct amount of stitches, you're just going to turn your work, chain 2, and work 1 half double crochet into each stitch all the way back down. And you're just going to repeat this until you have the correct amount of rows for your pocket panel. So just 1 half double crochet into each stitch across, chain 2, turn your work, and repeat until you have the right amount of rows. For me, that is 16 rows, and then I'm just going to fasten off and leave a tail long enough to sew all 4 sides of the square to my sweater. So you want a long tail for sewing, and you also need to go back and rework this a second time. So go and make another pocket panel. Okay, so we finally have all of our panels complete, and now we just need to join them together. So I have my back panel laying here, right side facing up. The right side is the side with the treble crochets that are nice and textured. And then I'm going to take my front panels and lay them right side down so that the right sides of the panels are facing together. That way when we seam it up, the seams will be on the inside of the cardigan. So first thing we're going to do is just sew the last row of the front panel to the top of the back panel. You can use your hook and slip stitch across, or you can use your needle like I am here and just use your preferred sewing method. It really does not matter here, that you can do whatever you prefer. It's just personal preference for how you like to sew your pieces together. So I'm just going to do it with my needle here and do the mattress stitch and sew these last rows together, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the other front panel as well, making sure to not skip any stitches or bunch them up. I want to make them nice and even across. Okay, once your front panels are attached, we need to now attach the sleeves. So I'm just going to lay my sweater out. I have it right side down right now just so I can show you guys how to bring in that sleeve. You can see the top shoulder seam here. We want to line that top shoulder seam up to the center of the sleeve. So I'm going to place my sleeve right side down as well. And then I want to make sure that the center of that panel is lined up nice and even with my shoulder seam. So I had 50 stitches in my sleeve, so I'm going to count 25 stitches on either side and make sure that it's attached right there in the center with a stitch marker. And then I'm going to also attach with a stitch marker at the end and make sure that I'm ending it on the same row amount that I am starting it. So you just want to make sure that you have an even amount of the sleeve on either side of the seam at the shoulder, and then use your stitch markers to hold it in place. And then you can just use the same method that you did for attaching the front and back panels and just sew across from one end of the sleeve to the other side. And then you want to do the same thing with the second sleeve as well. Once you have your sleeve attached here at the arm, you want to fold your piece together so that the right sides are still facing, and you want to sew from the cuff to the underarm and the underarm down to the bottom hem of the sweater. If you have enough of the yarn left over where you attached here at the upper arm, you could just keep going and sew all the way down the side if you wanted to, or all the way down the length of the sleeve. That's what I recommend doing to help avoid cutting and joining in more yarn. And then just bring in a new piece to finish on the other side, either the cuff to the underarm or the underarm to the hem, and then repeat that same exact thing on the other side so that both sleeves are attached as well as the sides of the cardigan. Now we have to take our pocket panels and attach those to the inside of our cardigan and sew all four sides down. So it's really important when you're sewing the pocket panel that you are not sewing at the bottom of the opening. You want to sew at the top of the opening. If you sewed at the bottom of the hole, it would sew our pocket shut. So that is a common mistake, and you just want to be really aware of what you're doing. Make sure you're attaching the top row of the pocket up here above the hole. That way we leave the pocket hole open. And then we're just going to work in a square and sew across the top, sew down the side, and then sew along the bottom. It should be about even with row 1 of the main body of the front panel, and then sew up the other side. So when you're sewing, you want to make sure that you don't poke your needle through to the front. And you also want to make sure that the hole isn't draped open like that. You want to pull it nice and tight so that the rows are touching. That way your pocket isn't going to be all saggy or stretched out. You just want to be really aware and make sure that the front panel is laying nice and flat as you join this. You can use your tail that you left on the pocket panel and then your needle, and just use whichever method you prefer to sew together. Just be really careful when you're attaching that you're not bringing that needle all the way through to the other side. We don't want to see your seam on the outside of the cardigan. I also recommend to use stitch markers here to keep everything in place. That way your pocket goes on nice and straight. I'm working the top of my pocket to the half double crochet row that is 2 rows above the pocket opening. And I'm just going to sew it across that row nice and even, and then down the side along the bottom and back up. And then I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So as you're going, just make sure you're checking the front and you're not snagging or accidentally sewing through the panel as you go. So sew that panel on and then repeat on the other side. Now that we have everything sewn together and our pockets added in, we just need to add the trim ribbing to the front and the opening of the cardigan here. So we're going to be taking a new piece of yarn, and our cardigan is now right side facing out, and I'm going to join my yarn into the bottom inner corner of the front panel on the left side, which is our right panel when worn. And I'm just going to insert it into that very corner ribbing stitch and then just slip stitch to join. If you prefer a more basic trim, you can just single crochet across the front panel, about the back neckline and back down, but I'm going to be doing a ribbing here. And so I'm going to chain 5. And then in the second chain from the hook, I'm just going to insert my hook into that back bump and work a single crochet. and then work a single crochet into the other remaining chains as well for a total of 4 single crochet stitches. So we joined in with a slip stitch, chained 5, and now we're just single crocheting back down that chain for a total of 4 single crochet. When we get back to the front panel, I'm just going to slip stitch in to the next stitch to join, and we're just working our ribbing rows off the sides of the front panels here. So if you're not used to this, it might feel a little weird working directly off of the panels, but it gets easier as you practice and you get going. So this first time, we're just going to slip stitch 1 time into that next stitch. The remainder of the time we'll slip stitch 2, but this time we're just slip stitching 1, and we have 1 row complete of the ribbing. Now I'm going to turn my work, and we're going to work a single crochet into the back loop only here. So the back loop again is furthest away from us. You'll notice that I didn't work a chain. There's no chains made when you're on the side closest to the front panel. So just single crochet directly into it, into the next 2 as well. So 3 single crochet back loop only, and then in the outer single crochet, we're going to do it under the front and the back loop. So 3 single crochet back loop only, 1 regular single crochet, turn your work and chain 1, and we're going to work back across. So again, in that very first stitch, work a single crochet under both loops, and then in the next 3 single crochet stitches, you're just going to be doing the back loop only. Once you've worked your 4 single crochet stitches, now we're going to be slip stitching into our front panel twice instead of once. So there's my 4th single crochet, and now in the next unworked stitch of the front panel, I'm going to insert my hook into it. Again, these are chains from the ribbing, so they might be a little tight. So I've slip stitched once, and then I'm going to work a second slip stitch now into the next stitch. So from here on out, once we join back in with a slip stitch, we're going to slip stitch into the following one as well. So a total of 2 slip stitch before we turn our work, and then in the first stitch, work a single crochet back loop only, a second single crochet back loop only, a third single crochet back loop only, and then a single crochet under both the front and the back for the last stitch, and then chain 1 and turn our work. Now we're going to work back across. So single crochet into that first stitch, and then a single crochet into the back loop only of the following stitch, a single crochet in the back loop only in the stitch after that, and then 1 more single crochet in the back loop only in that last stitch. Again, now we're going to slip stitch into the next unworked stitch of the panel, and then we can't forget our second slip stitch, so work another slip stitch as well into the unworked stitch directly after that. So it was 4 single crochet and then slip stitch, slip stitch. You can tell I'm struggling with getting my hook into the chains here of the ribbing. I promise it's not going to be like that for the rest of the panel, just here on these 10 stitches of the ribbing, because my chains were really tight. And so you're just going to continue repeating this same thing over and over. You can go back and rewatch if you need to on the ribbing. And then I'm also going to show you how to work the ribbing once we get past the chains of the 10 stitches of the ribbing rows that we have. So I'll show you how to work the stitches into the ends of the front panel rows here in just a second. Okay, so I've made it through the ribbing section, and now I'm going to show you on how to slip stitch into the sides of the rows of the front panel. So obviously you don't have an actual stitch to slip stitch into. You're just going to be slip stitching into the ends of the rows. So you'll want to kind of go forward slightly and then locate a spot where you can insert your hook. You're going to want to do it into an actual into the actual yarn so that it holds it in place. You don't want to slip stitch around a stitch, but actually insert it into the end of the stitch in that row and slip stitch twice like normal, and then just work your rows like normal as well. So it's important as you're working along the sides of the front panels that you are leaving enough space when you're doing your 2 slip stitches. Don't work them too close together because then your ribbing will get wavy and you'll have too many ribbing rows for the opening of your panel. So you want to make sure that you're spacing it evenly, just as you would if there was an actual stitch there. So you're just going to have to use your best judgment and find a good spot to put your hook, working it through the yarn. So you'll see I'm going to go forward slightly to where there's an empty space, slip stitch in, and then again move forward some more, insert my hook, and slip stitch in. So we're just working them into the ends of the rows and continuing to repeat the same thing. You're going to do it all the way up the side of the front panel. When you get to the back neckline, do the same thing. This time you can work into the back panel stitches and then work all the way down the front panel here. And I'm at the very last row. You might end with either 1 stitch left or 2. If you have 2, you can slip stitch, turn and work 1 more row, or if you just have 1, you can just slip stitch into it and then go ahead and fasten off to complete the ribbing opening. After that, the only thing left to do is weave in any remaining ends you might have with your needle, and then that is it for this design. Thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial. Please like and subscribe for more free content, and I will see you guys in the next video tutorial.